evening, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for what I think is going to be a very, very interesting evening. I was curious about some stuff that was going on in Norway, and I had the opportunity last week to speak to the ambassador from Norway, Ambassador Anniken Krutnes, and we chatted for about, half hour, 45 minutes, and I found it really, really interesting. In terms of what she was telling me about her country. And I kind of think that as Americans, we do not know a whole lot about the kind of economic models and social models that exist throughout the world. And for a long, long time, I have been impressed by what is called the Scandinavian model, and it differs between Norway or Denmark or Sweden or Finland or whatever. They all have their differences, but essentially, they have a very different social system in many respects than we do. And I think it's important as Americans that we start learning about things that are going on around the rest of the world on issues that concern us. So I am delighted that Ambassador Krutnes is with us this evening. And let me introduce her by saying that the ambassador is a career diplomat with 28 years of experience from the Foreign Service. She is married with 3 grown-up children and has spent the last year and a half as Norway's ambassador to the United States. Ambassador Krutnes, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Senator. It's a pleasure to be invited to join you. I'm always willing and enthusiastic about sharing everything about Norway. And of course, we are very proud of the way we have organized our society, but it goes without saying that it's not necessarily a model that can be copied by anyone. All countries are different, but I'm, of course, very eager to share how we did it.
Good. Well, thank you very much. And you're right. Obviously, Norway is a very small country. What is it, 5.5 million people?
Yeah, 5.5. Yeah.
Fairly homogeneous people.
Fairly homogeneous, yes.
Right. Okay, and we are a nation of 320 million people. So obviously, great differences between the two countries, but I think it's important that we learn from each other. I have long been involved and interested and concerned about the American healthcare system, which in my view is kind of dysfunctional. We spend a whole lot of money, about $11,000 a year per person on healthcare, about 18% of our GDP. And yet we have some 70 million people who are uninsured or underinsured. And everybody you talk to in America spends half their life filling out forms trying to get health insurance, trying to deal with the insurance company. So my first question to you is, tell us a little bit about the healthcare system in Norway. Talk about what it means to the average person. We don't need, if I'm a Norwegian, can I go to any doctor I want? How much does it cost me? Is it universal? What's the quality of care? Is it good? Why don't we start there?
Yeah, perfect. So, our healthcare system is financed through taxation. So that means for me that if I go to the doctor, I pay a deductible. It's about $35. And I will do that every time I need some healthcare until I've paid $350 within a year. After that, I stop paying. That means that after that, everything is free for me. So I will never pay more than $350 a year for healthcare or medicines.
All right, let me stop. Well, let me stop you there.
Yeah.
I want to make this point. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you are saying if, God forbid, somebody ends up in a hospital, they have cancer, they're in the hospital for weeks, they undergo major surgery, they need all kinds of sophisticated drugs. The maximum that person will pay in a given year is $350. Is that correct? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. That's correct. And
all
still,
right.
Still we pay, or Norway, the expenses we have on healthcare is 11% of the GDP. So you said, Senator, that here you have around 18%. So we spend 11%, and still we're able to provide healthcare for everyone. It's guaranteed that you have the healthcare you need.
All right, let me again, because not everybody in America really appreciates what goes on in other countries. That means that just being a Norwegian citizen, I am entitled to healthcare. Is that what we're talking about?
Absolutely. Yes, you're
Okay.
entitled to it.
And everybody is covered.
Everybody is covered.
All right, now let me ask you this. Let's get to the nitty gritty. Can I go to any doctor I want?
You have to register with your family doctor, a general practitioner, and he or she will then send you to a specialist if that is needed.
Okay. And I read someplace the Commonwealth Fund, people may know, is an organization that studies international healthcare. If I'm not mistaken, I may be, but I don't think I am. They recently regarded Norway as having the highest quality healthcare system in the world. Is that correct?
I wouldn't know, Senator, but it is very good. It's very good. I don't know if it's the best in the world, but it is very good. And I think one of the features is that we try to avoid over consumption of healthcare. The public enterprises that are responsible for healthcare, they get allocated a budget and they have to deliver what the population needs within that budget. So they are, of course, keen not to push any healthcare that is not necessary on the consumers, on the population.
I talked for a moment about prescription drugs. In the United States, we pay outrageously high prices for prescription drugs. What's the story in Norway?
They are much cheaper, and that is because the government negotiates with the big pharmaceutical companies. So the government as such is a huge consumer and has some consumer power and negotiates with the big pharmaceuticals to get the prices lowered.
Well, I think as many of the viewers tonight know, that is precisely what we are trying to do here in this country, but we're running into, needless to say, very strong opposition from the drug companies. And once again, I want to get back to expenditures here. So if I have a terrible chronic illness and I require a lot of prescription drugs, at the end of the day, I'm still not going to be spending more than $350 a year?
That's correct. If you have a prescription for a necessary drug, that is correct. It's capped at $350. The only thing that is not included is your dental care.
That's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
We talk about that later, but dental care is separate. Is that the case?
That's correct.
Okay, that's certainly true in the United States. If I am a young man or a young woman, and we're going to get into this in a moment in terms of education, but let's just say I am interested in going to medical school. Mm-hmm. In this country, I have talked to people who have graduated medical school $400,000 or $500,000 in debt, which then obviously impacts the kind of specialties that they move into and where they locate, etc. How much in debt am I when I graduate medical school in Norway?
You would probably have around 40,000 in debt. That is because during the years that you were a student, you would probably wish to use the offer from our student loan system. So you would, although tuition is free, you will still have to pay for a place to live and some food, some living expenses. So we have this agency and they would provide you with a bit of a loan and a bit of a grant. So you get a grant for your studies, but you also have to probably, unless your parents are very rich, you would have to take up a loan. And the average graduate has $41,000 in loan.
Okay, so tuition is free, but room and board is not, and people can borrow money to pay for that.
Yeah, and everybody can borrow that money, and it is a loan that is very manageable. So if you suddenly are laid off or you're chronically ill for a year or something, they will not ask you to pay on your loan. So it's a very manageable loan.
All right, now that we're on education, let's go beyond medical education. Um, as a matter of fact, well, right now in this country, we have, I believe, about 45 million Americans who are dealing with student debt. We have many hundreds of thousands of young people literally choose not to go to college. They're bright, they could do well, they choose not to go to college because the cost of college is so expensive. They don't want to leave in debt. We have a childcare system where workers are underpaid, but it remains very, very expensive. Averages about $15,000 per person. So let's go to, for the little kids, let's go to childcare.
Mhm.
So if I have a baby, young couple have a baby, what's the story? What's happening there?
Oh, well, let me start with the beginning. If you have a baby, you can take 1 year with paid leave, paid parental leave.
I'm going to interrupt you. All right.
Yeah.
This is time for a commercial announcement. Did everybody hear what you just said? Okay. We live in a country where there's 0 paid family and medical leave. So if I hear you correctly, you're talking about 1 year of fully paid leave. Is that correct when you have a baby?
That's correct. And I have to add that some of this leave has to be taken by the mother, some of it has to be taken by the father, and some of it they can choose. Of course, if you have same-sex couples, it goes for the same. One parent takes 1/3, the other parent takes 1/3, and they choose who takes the last third.
So in other words, if both mom and dad want to take time off, it would be 6 months for each.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let me ask you a question. I think I know the answer, but I'd like your opinion on it. Why do you think it is so important that young couples be given this much time off without any financial difficulties, earning the same as they did before? Why is that so important? Why do you do that?
We do it because we want Norwegians to have babies. We want more Norwegians, and because we want people to be able to combine having a career with having a family, and we want women out in the workforce. That is what has made Norway rich, is because we use the entire workforce, both men and women. And if you want to have women in the workforce, you have to have a system for a maternity leave. And we also appreciate that the daddy has to spend some weeks at home with the baby, because that gives him some habits that he will probably take with him. He knows how to cook for the baby. Or, well, a baby doesn't need too advanced cooking, but so we establish a kind of a family from day one, where there's a lot of equality between the two parents of the child.
Okay.
And if I may, let me just continue, because when that child is about a year and it's time to go back to work, you are guaranteed daycare for your child, and the max price is $340 per month.
Guaranteed. Is it good quality healthcare?
Daycare, it's good quality, of course. Of course, with highly educated people taking care of your children. It's very high quality.
Let me just jump in here to contrast that. We have, I don't think anyone denies, and we have been working on this issue in the last year intensely. We will see if we have any success or not. But in America right now, as I think many of you know, we don't have enough childcare slots. I don't know if you know that, Madam Ambassador, but there are women 2 days after they learn they're pregnant are busy running to try to find the childcare slot, because we don't have enough facilities in this country. Many of them are not adequate. Those that are good are enormously expensive. I had a staffer right here in DC. Somebody worked with me, had a baby. She was paying over $30,000 a year for childcare. Washington is more expensive than other places. In Vermont, nationally, it's about $15,000. So once again, in Norway, it is what, $350 a month? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the maximum price. And I have to add that this is something new. I mean, when my kids were small, I actually paid a bit more, and I actually had to look a bit around to find daycare. So this is something that have come over the last 2 decades, and especially the guarantee. And of course, it is much more expensive, but it is subsidized by the government because it is extremely expensive to run a good daycare in Norway. But the government subsidizes it, so the max price for the parents is $340 per month.
Okay, it is expensive by definition because it's labor intensive. You're not going to have one childcare worker for 30 kids. You know, it just doesn't.
No, I think we have like 1 per 3 or 1 per 4. I'm not sure, and it depends on the age, of course. But
Right.
yeah.
Okay, let me jump to another issue, and that is wages, income in Norway.
Yeah.
All right, so if I go to work in Norway, young person, go get a job, maybe I don't go to college. Oh, you know what? Let me retract here. Before we get to wages, I want to stay on education and ask you about college.
Mhm.
How much does it cost me to go to college in Norway?
The college is free. College is free, tuition is free, and we don't have the campuses. So when you talk about room and board, we don't do that so much on campus. So you have to either stay home, live with your parents, or rent a room somewhere. But tuition is free. Yeah.
And graduate school is free as well?
Yeah, everything is free.
So you say that matter-of-factly, and right now all over America, people are watching this that have dropped out of their chairs because they cannot believe there's a country on earth which makes college and graduate school tuition free. So,
and let me just add that we have very few private schools. So when you're in elementary, middle school, high school, you go to public schools. 96% go to public schools. So it also makes us more equal. Or when you want to go to college or university, we all start from the same point because we all went to the same schools.
right, that is a very profound and important point that maybe we'll return to in a few moments. But we talked about childcare, we talked about college. What's the quality of the public education that almost everybody attends in between? People satisfied with it?
Yes. People are very satisfied with
Are teachers well paid?
Yes, they are getting decently paid. We have upgraded teacher education to a master degree. So if you want to be a teacher, you have a master's degree in teaching, which has elevated the status and the pay of teachers.
Are you able to attract bright young people who are really interested in teaching into the profession?
Absolutely. It's very difficult to get into the teachers' college or to get that education.
Wow. Okay. All right, let's get back to the economy now. Let's talk about wages. What shall I say? I graduate college, I go out and I get a job. And I know wages will differ from wherever I work, but give me some idea of what we're talking about in terms of what working class people, middle class people in Norway will earn.
Well, the median income in Norway is $60,000.
Median, okay.
Yeah, the median, yeah. So that's what a typical Norwegian will earn, $60,000 per year.
I assume that if I'm younger, I start lower, and if I'm older, I will probably end up making more.
Yeah, correct. But
all right. All right. That was an interesting, we talked about this when you and I chatted last week. Let's say I go to get a job in McDonald's. You have McDonald's in Norway, right? Everybody has a McDonald's. And I'm flipping hamburgers. How much do I make?
$20 per hour.
Please repeat that.
$20 per hour.
Okay, $20 per hour.
Yeah.
Okay. And I will have health care as a result of the healthcare system.
Yes, that has nothing to do with work. the healthcare is there anyway.
See, what a radical idea not to have healthcare attached to your job, that it's there for everybody. But that's another story. Okay, so I got $20 an hour flipping hamburgers at McDonald's. All right, I'm a college graduate. Go out and I get a decent job. What am I making?
If you're a college graduate, you would probably 45,000, 50,000 at your first job.
Okay. Now, talk a little bit about trade unionism in this country. We have, although we're seeing an uptick right now, and I'm working really hard on that, we have seen a significant decline in the percentage of our workforce which is union. In the private sector now, believe it or not, it's down to about 6%. What percentage of workers in Norway belong to unions?
About 50%.
50%.
Yeah, more or less.
That's public and private combined?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But the unions play a big role in society, I would almost say. We don't have a minimum wage set by the government or set by law, but we do have yearly negotiations between the employers' organizations and the employees' organizations, or the unions, that come to a general accord about the wage in different sectors. And so they have agreed that, like last year, the minimum wage in construction sector is $22. And then that applies to everyone in that sector, whether you're unionized or not. So that is the way we set wages, is between negotiations between employers and employees organizations. And there has been this partnership since just after the Second World War. So these negotiations between these two partners in work life has also gained like sick leave rights. So we have a right to a sick leave. If you're sick a day, you still get the full pay. Vacations, 28 days of vacation per year.
Oh, stop. Let me just jump in again. All right. Everybody hear what the ambassador said. Correct me if I'm wrong. You just said every Norwegian gets 28 days of paid vacation?
Yes, I could be wrong. It could be 25. Some have 28, but it's at least 25.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let me ask you a dumb question. I know the answer, but I want you to answer it. In this country, people are guaranteed zero vacation, and there are millions of people, believe it or not. I hope everybody knows that. Who go to work, they have zero vacation at all. And we work incredibly long hours in this country. Why do you think it's important, Madam Ambassador, that people be guaranteed a significant amount of vacation time?
Again, it's the work-life balance, and the economy can afford it. We have 37.5 week. That is 37.5 hour week, which means that's again one of the issues that is negotiated between employers and employees. How much do we work every week? So the standard work week is 37.5 hours. So there is this balance between work and life. You're supposed to have a career and a family, or a life outside job. Let me just say that our economy is a combination of the market economy, a highly competitive market economy, and a safety net that is provided by the government. So we have private initiative, we have free market economy, we have global trade, we depend on global trade, but we also have a government sector that redistributes and makes sure that everyone has a safety net. And we have vacation, and we have education, and we have healthcare.
I think you referred to that as capitalism with a heart. Was that right?
I did. You remember that, Senator.
I do.
Exactly what it is.
All right. There are people who are listening to this program, and they're saying, this kind of sounds a little bit too good to be true. She seems like an honest person. I assume she's telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, something is wrong here. And it must mean that I'm paying 90% of my income in taxes in order to support this entire economy. All right. So let me raise the question, the legitimate question. When you're talking about more or less free healthcare, more or less free education, when you're talking about high wages, when you're talking about paid family and medical leave, all that's pretty expensive. Good quality childcare. All right. How much does the average person in Norway pay in taxes?
Well, the guy or the lady who was at the median and earned $60,000 will pay 26% of that in tax.
Is that in what we would call federal tax? Is there state, is there local tax on top of that?
No, that's all the taxes included. But you would notice that if you went to buy something in a shop, there would be a 25% sales tax. That's a very
that's in addition.
Yeah.
All right, that's in addition to my 26%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, that VAT tax, does that apply to everything?
Yes. On food and transport, it is lower. It's 12 to 15%. On everything else, also services like sleeping in a hotel, it would be 25%.
Okay.
So that's
All right, so
very
the
important.
truth is then I'm paying 26% on average in income tax, but I'm paying a lot more in taxes through the sales tax.
Exactly. And 26% of your income is for the average guy. If you earn more, you will pay more. We have a tax system, of course, that the more you earn, the higher your percentage tax will be.
Okay, let me skip to another question about the economy and about values. In America today, I hope that all of the viewers know, we have more income and wealth inequality than we've had in this country in 100 years. You got two people who own more wealth on the bottom, 42%, top 1% owns more wealth on the bottom, 92%. Employers, CEOs of major corporations now make 350 times more than their average worker. All right. Madam Ambassador, talk to us a little bit about income and wealth inequality in Norway.
So I think what you just said, Senator, how much more a CEO earns. So in Norway, if you take the 100 biggest companies and the CEOs of them, their average is 660,000. And the average, the median income is 60,000. So the CEO is 11 times more the average. So that is the.
Let me interrupt you. I don't mean to be rude. I just want to interrupt you. What the ambassador just said is that in Norway, the ratio of CEOs of their major corporations compared to the average worker is 11 to 1. In this country, it is 350 to 1. Somewhat of a difference. Let me explain something to me. In this country, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I won't, is, people who have a lot of wealth and a lot of power, they want it all. What kind of culture exists in Norway where people are satisfied? And from where I come from, $600,000 is not a bad income. But don't these guys say, gee, in America, I could make $50 million or $100 million. Why am I only settling, for $600,000? Tell me about the culture that makes people feel okay about that.
Well, I think part of it is history. Norway has not always been a very wealthy country. So we are modest people, and we appreciate a society where we have this safety net, where we know that our neighbor or family or friends all are okay. We have a lot of trust in society, and we know that we don't have to worry about the big things in life, except your own health. Of course, health is a worry, but the economy of health is not an issue. We know we have the possibility to give our kids a bright future with good education, with healthcare, with childcare. I'm so happy that my 3 children can go ahead and have babies, and they can have interesting work and they can do it all. That's what we appreciate. And we understand that is more important to us than an enormous wealth that yeah.
You know, it's funny, you said that when you and I chatted last week, and I mentioned you, and I'll mention it again, that, you know, they do these studies around the world, and how much they're worth, I don't know, trying to determine what the happiest country is. Now, happiness is a difficult thing to, you know, determine, but they do these studies.
Yeah.
And often Scandinavia, Denmark, Norway comes out at the very top of the list. And I said to you, well, why do you think that is the case? And that was the answer that you gave me. And it's a remarkable answer, if I may say so, is that what you're saying, I think, is that these CEOs who only make $600,000 a year are quite happy to see everybody else in the country do well as well. They get pride out of that and satisfaction out of that, which may be worth more than some billionaires in the United States get. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. And yeah, it is. And I have to add that we have a beautiful country. We love being outdoor, and nature is important for us. And nature you cannot buy by money. So it's there for us. That's what we're so happy for, I think.
All right, let's go to, you mentioned nature. Let's talk about environmental issues. We'll talk about climate. It is no great secret that Norway is a major producer of fossil fuel. And that you have, and I want to maybe say a few words on your Norwegian Wealth Fund and what that is. But for a start, what is Norway doing about climate change, a major crisis for every country on earth?
We are, of course, also cutting emissions. We will cut greenhouse gas emission by 50% before 2030. And as you said, Senator, we are a major producer of oil and gas, not coal, and every day less oil, but we're still a huge producer of gas. We will make sure the emissions from oil and gas production is cut by 50% in 2030. We do that partly by electrifying the production of gas. And our electricity is purely hydrogen. So we are 95% hydropower, our electricity. But we are also looking to the future. So we are doing a green shift in our energy production. We use the technology we have from offshore production of gas to produce offshore windmills. So we're looking into offshore wind, hydrogen, and of course we do the carbon capture and storage. So we see that the future is green, the future is renewable, but we also see that right now Europe needs our gas. And our gas is cleaner than a lot of other gas, but for the next decade, we will probably need fossil fuels in the energy mix. And right now, I think when we see the situation with Russia's war on Ukraine, and we see how Europe, especially Germany, is trying to rid themselves of the Russian gas, we will not stop producing. We will be a reliable source of gas for Europe for some years to come.
Say a little bit about your wealth fund. It is, I think you have $1 trillion in that wealth fund or something like that?
Yeah, 1.3 trillion right now.
1.3 trillion for a country of 5 million people is not too bad.
It's my passion.
That's your, okay. How did that wealth fund, tell us about the origin of the wealth fund, where the money came from, what it is used for.
Mm-hmm. So the money came from the oil and gas sector because we tax the companies, and I will say we tax them quite heavily, 72% if I remember correctly, and that is because we wanted that the income from this sector should be of benefit to all the people. So we put them in a fund, and we have this rule that all political parties agree on, that we only spend a maximum of 4% of the income of the fund every year. So the fund will grow and grow, but of course we have then financial income from the fund, and we can spend 4% of that income and put it into our budget. The rest will make the fund grow even bigger.
So that 4% is your pension, huh?
Yeah.
Let me talk a little bit. The issue of immigration is a huge issue in the United States, throughout Europe, throughout the world. Tell us about immigration in Norway. What are your challenges? What is working? What is not working in Norway?
Yeah, we have 20%, close to 20% of the population in Norway is considered immigrant. That is to say that either you yourself or both your parents came from abroad to Norway. If that's the definition we use, we have 18.5% immigrant population in Norway, and in the capital Oslo, it's actually 1/3 of the population would be immigrant. So,
Really?
so you asked if we are a homogeneous society, and I said yes, to a certain extent we are, but we do have then a great immigrant population, and there, I would say, 3 categories, because we are part of the internal market in the European Union. Even though we're not a member of EU, we are part of their 4 freedoms, and one of them is the freedom to move freely around. So our biggest immigrant population right now are Europeans from Poland, Lithuania, Sweden. Then we had workers coming in the 70s from Pakistan, Turkey, and Morocco. And then the third is, of course, the refugees, and they are from Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan. And these 3 groups have to be integrated differently. Of course, a Swede speaks the language, and Afghani does not. So we have introduction courses, we have support programs, language courses. So we have a lot of programs to try and integrate immigrants.
Now, throughout the world, certainly including the United States, there's a lot of tension with regard to immigration, etc. Overall, are there, and I'm sure that Norwegian is not the exception to the rule, but what are some of the problems that exist? What are the success stories? If you could say a few words about that.
Well, there are many success stories. We see especially the Pakistani immigrants that came in the 70s. They are well integrated. Their daughters and sons are medical doctors. So they have integrated well. But it takes a generation. And I think one of the problems is if you don't learn the language, you will have problem getting a job. So we see the language as key to this. If you don't learn the language, you don't integrate in society. That's also one of the reasons, or one of the benefits from having this daycare, that every child has daycare, because then you integrate them from early on. And the same with the schools. We, as I said, we all go to public schools. So there is kind of integration of the immigrants from a very early age.
When we chatted last week, you mentioned something to me that I thought was very interesting, and that you said that you think that in Norway, people trust their government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that in this country, that is not necessarily the case. Talk about that trust, how it manifests itself, and why you think that is occurring.
Well, I think a recent example is the pandemic, and when the government told us that please don't be more than 5 people together, we thought, okay, if the government says that's the scientific advice, then we trust that, and we do as they say. So we trust their decisions. We don't mind paying taxes because we know that the government gives us something back. They give us the education, they give us the healthcare, and in general, we trust not only government, but we also trust each other. So there is in general trust in society. Yes.
Do you have good participation, voter turnouts in your elections?
Yeah, we normally have between 70 and 75%.
That's talk a little bit. You are a parliamentary form of government, which is what almost all of Europe is. We are not in the United States. Talk a little bit about that, what that means. You have a number of different political parties. Talk about the status of politics in Norway right now.
Yes, we have many parties. At least 12 parties will get votes during an election. And then parliamentarism means that those who have a majority in government, in parliament, will form the government. So normally it takes more than one party to get that majority. So the leader of the most successful party in the elections will talk to other leaders of support parties, and then together they form a coalition government. In Norway, the biggest party since Second World War has changed between the Social Democrats, the Labour Party, and the Conservatives. They are both center parties, center left, center right, and we change. Every 4 or 8 years, we change between those. And then they build blocks, which means that the government will always be somewhere in the center of the political spectrum, because that's where you find the gravity of the political forces. But
I would assume, and I know your job is not to be political, but
correct.
I would assume that even, the Conservative Party, the center-right party, that nobody in that party would say, well, we think that universal health care is not a good idea. We want to do away with that concept. Would anybody in that party say that?
No, they wouldn't. You're absolutely correct in your assumption, Senator. They would not. The center-right party also agreed to that. So there's a lot of consensus on the important issue. Our model, our social democratic welfare model, that's a consensus model.
And that's an important point. Let me ask you this, maybe we can conclude on this basis. Norway today is a wealthy, modern society. That wasn't always the case.
No.
It wasn't so many years ago that Norway was a pretty poor country. Can you talk about the modern history of Norway and how you evolved from where you are? Where were you? I don't know, maybe you could tell us, to where you are today.
Well, we were a nation of fishermen and farmers. And I would say our wealth started after the Second World War. That's when we really started to build the nation. Although we've had industry since early 20th century, it's really after the Second World War we started. And I think that the cooperation between employers and employees, organizations with the government that has tried to always have a stable economy, and share the benefits of the economic activity is what has taken us here. Of course, we were lucky to find oil and gas at the point we did, and that has been good for our economy. But as important has been that we've been able to get everybody out in the workforce. And we are absolutely diversifying our economy away from oil and gas. We're not a commodity economy any longer. But I think it's the innovation, is the research, and it's the workforce. We're a very competitive economy. So I think a combination of all of this, but of course, the fact that everybody gets a decent education, is also extremely important for economic growth. We have a lot of smart people, but that doesn't help if you don't give them all a good education. So the education is probably the key to the success.
We've covered a lot of territory this evening. Is there anything you would like to tell our viewers about Norway that we haven't covered?
I think we've covered a lot, Senator, but I think I would like to add that very many Norwegians love America. They are so envious of me who are able to spend some years here. And I think there's a lot we can learn from you as well. So I'm observing every day what we can learn from you.
That's what it should be. We should learn from you. You should learn from us, and we can improve both countries as a result. Well, let me just thank Ambassador Anniken Krutnes for spending some time with us tonight. I think, as Americans, we have got a lot to learn. We have a lot to offer. We have a lot to learn. And I so much appreciate, Madam Ambassador, your giving us a brief symposium on Norway. And I know I was there once. It is an incredibly beautiful country. And congratulations to all that you and your fellow Norwegians have accomplished.
Thank you very much, Senator. It was a pleasure joining you in this program. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Thanks very much for being with us. See you soon. Take care.